founded by the ADAPT Ethics and Privacy Working Group, and we're a working group of computer scientists, sociologists, philosophers, lawyers and ethicists who are interested in looking at the ethical and legal issues that arise in the context of the development of the technology that's associated with the ADAPT Centre. And so we've had some excellent seminars and lectures already in the course of this calendar year. Many of you have been at them, and we're very privileged this afternoon to have another excellent speaker on a really interesting topic, I think. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Vessel to introduce the topic. Thank you very much.
So again, welcome everybody. And it's a real honor that I can introduce Karsten Weber, Professor Karsten Weber. And he's a professor of general science and technology at the Brandenburg University of Technology of Cottbus-Senftenberg, if I say it correctly.
Correct.
And he's also the co-head of the Institute of Social Research and Technology Assessment at University of Applied Sciences, OTH Regensburg. And I'm really happy that he found the time to be with us here in Dublin today, especially also because I think the ethics part in technology research here in Dublin is still in its first steps, and I think every input from anywhere else in Europe can really enlighten the process here. So I think also today we will hear some best practices of how things are done in Germany, and maybe also some worst practices. I don't know. So I would not spill any more words, so I would welcome you to the floor, Karsten.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. I'm really honored to be here, and I really appreciate that I was invited to come here. It's the first time I'm in Ireland and the first time in Dublin, and I guess that is a really good reason to be here. Because I present to you some of my work and some of my ideas. As you probably hear, that I'm not an English native speaker, so if I make some mistakes, please forgive me. And if you do not understand anything, then please feel free to interrupt me and just ask what I try to say. And then I will try to say it again and to explain. So if you would like to interrupt me, this wouldn't be a problem. Okay. The title of my presentation is Value-Sensitive Design, Why Ethics is Important if you want to build good computer systems. You can see here on the slide. I will present to you some preliminary examples, two short examples, and then I would like to present to you the thing that Vessel called best practice in Germany. It's related to the assessment of technology that is used in the care of elderly people. So I would try to explain what I mean with value-sensitive design in case of so-called ambient assisted living systems, which shall be used in the care of elderly people who are living at home. But first, let me show you this quote from a colleague from the Netherlands, my famous colleague. Actually, I do not know to pronounce his name. Okay, exactly. It is argued that information systems are intentionally or unintentionally informed by moral values of their makers. Since information technology has become a constitutive technology which shapes human life, it is important to be aware of the value-ladenness of IT design. This quotation says that we should be aware that our moral values and expectations, social norms and values are built in technology, and therefore they open options to activities, they open opportunities for certain behavior and at the same time they can prevent us to do something. And you can ask who has the legitimation to put such values, moral values, into the technology. Such values can be autonomy, privacy, justice, equality, and I guess a lot more. But it's not only values. It's very likely that we put in our technology theories, ethical theories. In Germany, for example, it's quite often so that people think in duties. People have to fulfill their duties towards other people. As far as I know, as far as I can see, in the English speaking world, often there's some kind of utilitarian thinking that we should increase the utility of persons in our actions and the use of technology. And there are a lot of more theories which could be built into technology. From the point of view of ethics, this kind of thinking is not really new, but it's not so old as it is in the legal sciences. You can see here Joel Reidenberg, an American lawyer and legal scientist, who wrote a paper in 1998 which is called Lex Informatica, the Formulation of Information Policy Rules Through Technology. And he argues that not only law regulates our life, but the way we design technology. And he makes examples about region codes in DVDs and other limitations in when we use content in digital media, for example. Reidenberg, his paper didn't get much recognition in the scientific community. I would like to say that it was too early to publish his ideas. The next one who got much more attention was Lawrence Lessig, as well as Reidenberg, a lawyer, quite famous lawyer in the United States, who wrote a book which is called Code and Other Laws of Cyberspace. And the second version was called Code 2.0. And in this book, Lawrence Lessig presented this idea. We have four modalities which regulate our behavior. We have the market, we have the laws, we have social and moral norms, and we have code, software. And the laws are enforced using code, and norms can be enforced using code. That's his core idea. And again, we can see that software can regulate our lives, and that we put in software like computer systems, moral and social norms. And I wouldn't like to go into those papers, but I would only show you that there are a couple of papers were published after those ideas Reidenberg and Lawrence Lessig presented. For example, this one, it was a student prize. It was a student who wrote this paper, James Gilman. Actually, now he is a professor for law in the United States. He made a quite impressive career after this paper was published. There are a lot of other papers who deal with the questions how software can regulate our life, how technology can regulate our life. Even in Germany, sometimes we are quite behind the hot topics. I would like to say, even in Germany, we have a discussion in this direction. Probably you can't read the title. It says software as an institution, and it's and the possibility to design it. It was the idea to bring together a couple of scientists. You see the long list of authors who try to explain what they think about software as an institution in the sense of software as a social institution that can enforce social and moral norms. Well, after this publication, there was no more debate about that question, at least in Germany, as far as I can see. But as you saw on the other slides, there's a huge debate on this topic. So, again, this quotation is argued that information systems are intentionally or unintentionally informed by moral values of their makers. I would like to show you two short examples in which this quotation, which can show that this quotation is correct. Two negative examples. The first one is not related to information and communication technology. The second one is related to ICT. This one is a little bit old example. You see here the subcompact car Ford Pinto, which was built by Ford in the time from 1970 to 1980. There were well-known problems with the fuel tank, and since sometimes a quotation says more than I could say, you see this large quotation. Consider an infamous case that, when it broke, had all the earmarks of conscious top-down corruption. The Ford Pinto, a compact car produced during the 1970s, became notorious for its tendency in rear-end collisions to leak fuel and explode into flames. Accidents. More than 2,000 people were killed or injured in Pinto fires before the company issued a recall to correct the problem. Scrutiny of the decision process behind the model's launch revealed that under intense competition from Volkswagen and other small car manufacturers, particularly from Japan, I guess, Ford had rushed the Pinto into production. Engineers had discovered the potential danger of ruptured fuel tanks in pre-production crash tests, but the assembly line was ready to go, and the company's leaders decided to proceed. Many saw the decision as evidence of the carelessness, greed, and mendacity of Ford's leaders. In short, their deep unethicality. So you can say in this case, there were no moral values in the design, and particularly in the decisions to build the car in the way it was built. You can say that the risk assessment did not take into account the value of the health and the value of human lives. So, and you can argue that this kind of decision was pretty immoral. Okay, this was the first short example. The second example, about the second example, I only heard a lecture, a presentation, and it was argued that fingerprint scanners used for identification at airports and at other places can be value-laden in a way that they discriminate in a way that you can call racist discrimination. What a fingerprint scanner scans ridges and furrows of your fingers and compares a newly acquired pattern of your fingers with the stored pattern. You probably know that much better than I do. And if the patterns match persons, the person is correctly identified. And in the lecture I heard a couple of years ago, it was mentioned that, for example, craftsmen, carpenters, for example, who work with sandpaper and so on, healthcare personnel who often have to wash their hands, and even some ethnic minorities do not have fingerprints that can be utilized for scanners to identify those people at the airport. And the argumentation went on to say those who designed those systems, those fingerprint scanners, did not take into account the diversity of human beings and their social situations, and therefore they behaved in a way that you can call as a kind of immoral racist discrimination, because they did not take into account that there are people who have problems with these fingerprints and did not care about that. Okay. this example, which was called a best practice example. A more complex example of designing IT systems concerning a lot of different stakeholders in case of care of elderly people. Before I start with the example, I tell you a short story about waking up in the morning. I guess you all know it. We have all stay up in the morning and let's imagine that we slept in this nice designer bed. You wake up, you try to get up, and suddenly the ghostly voice from the off says, well, you're not in a good shape. Your cardiovascular system is not pretty good. To be in a better shape, you have to do some push-ups, for example. You have to do 10 push-ups. You know this ghostly voice already, and you know that it doesn't make sense to argue with it, so you make your push-ups. Okay, now you wake up, went to the bathroom, and do what you have to do there. And again, you hear this ghostly voice, and it says that, well, the last night was probably quite long, and probably you had one beer too much. I recommend that you will drink at least 3 liters of water a day, during the day. Okay, you know it doesn't make sense to argue with this voice, and you try to remember that you have to drink a lot of water during the day. After that, you go to your kitchen and you would like to make you a really strong coffee, and you would like to press the button on your coffee machine, and again you hear this ghostly voice which says, no, coffee is not the right drink for you today. I recommend herbal tea or something like that. Because caffeine is not really a good drug for you today. Okay. Again, you know the coffee machine won't provide any coffee for you, so yes, you drink some water first. For some of us, and some of you this sounds maybe like a nightmare. For some of you and some of us, maybe it sounds like a wet dream, I would like to say. It seems to be a good idea to have such technology. And you can ask, where are these ideas coming from? Well, you have to go back in history, a little bit back into history, in the Stone Age of computer technology, I guess. You see here 2 of the most famous home computers. By the way, the first computers which were my own computers. One made in Great Britain, and one made which came from the United States. When these computers were introduced, computer technology, well, performance of computer technology was not really good. You have only few storage capacity. You have only few processors were not really powerful. However, even in this time, there were some visions about computer technology which would be completely different to the computer technology that was known at those days. You see here Mark Weisel, who published a famous article in the Scientific American, which is quite often quoted even today, The Computer for the 21st Century, and he says in this paper, the most profound technology are those that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. We are therefore trying to conceive a new way of thinking about computers, one that takes into account the human world and allows the computers themselves to vanish into the background. We shouldn't see computers anymore. They should only provide their services, but they shouldn't be recognized as computers, as technology. You find this idea, this idea was provided, the research about this technology you find several names for it: ubiquitous computing, for example, pervasive computing, ambient intelligence. In Germany, sometimes it is said anytime, anywhere computing and communication, but it's quite uncommon. Even the name smart home, potentially you already heard about it, and Internet of Things is often used today. And in the case of healthcare technology, you find names like telemonitoring, e-health, telemedicine, e-patient, ambient assisted living, as I already mentioned, and sometimes Health 2.0. Okay, you can argue that this is only research, there's no real application of this, but you also can ask why using such technology in case of care and healthcare. Well, particularly the situation in Germany is so that you have this situation. The German population is growing older and older. You see here the change, the structure of the population in 1910. The shape of the population was a pyramid, but now in 2001 it dramatically changed. You have less young people and much more older and very old people, and in 2050 the situation will even more dramatic. This is the reason why in Germany the idea that we can use technology to provide for care for the elderly is funded. A lot of research is done about technology which can be used for care for the elderly. Because we have the situation that when you take a look on a map from Germany, that in huge parts of Germany the population is shrinking dramatically. In all areas which are blue, the population is massively shrinking. Only in those areas where you have a red color, the population is growing. At the same time, we have growing number of old and very old people and less young people. This causes growing demand for care and the growing costs of care. At the same time, we have a lack of labor workforce. It is quite difficult in Germany to attract young people to work for care for the elderly. And particularly, we have already huge problems in rural and remote areas. Often it is the case that there's no medical doctors, no institutions that can provide for care. So the idea is bring technology to the people, and we do not have to have so much people who working for the care of the elderly. If you take a look on the map of Europe, you have a situation which is quite comparable to Germany, particularly in the Eastern and Middle, in Eastern Europe, in Middle Europe, in Poland, for example, and in other countries, in part of Spain, in parts of France. Ireland has this problem. In Ireland there is not this kind of problem. Here the population still is growing. But on the other side, when you take a look on this map, you see that in all countries of Europe, the number of old and very old people is growing quite fast, and it's not clear how to provide care for them. Therefore, the Ministry of Education and Research started a funding program in 2008, which shall provide for funding for research to develop technology that can be used to provide for care for the elderly. The aims were to enable old and very old people to stay longer in their own homes, according to the principle, which is a kind of legal regulation in Germany, that outpatient before inpatient care is preferred. Furthermore, it was one aim was to reduce the demand for labor workforce in the field of care and healthcare provision, and of course to reduce or at least to stabilize the costs of care and healthcare provision. So that's the situation in which this technology was developed. So, and some of my colleagues, two other colleagues of mine, three colleagues of mine, we were asked to make an ethical evaluation of those prototypes which were developed during this research projects, which results in this publication. Currently it is translated into English, and it is called Ethical Questions Concerning Enabling Assisted Living. And this is the whole, the example I would like to present to you. We developed a method or a tool that can be used to ethically evaluate so-called socio-technical arrangements. The whole idea is that if we use technology in situations to provide care for the elderly, we have a relationship between technology on the one hand and a person or a lot of persons on the other hand. And the core idea is that in this situation, when we use technology for the care of elderly people, a couple of moral values are at stake. We call them dimensions of evaluation, and you see those 7 dimensions, which are care in the sense of taking care of someone, then autonomy, safety and security, justice, privacy, participation, and self-conception. I will explain what is meant with those dimensions. Furthermore, we have levels of evaluation. I won't go deeper in this. More important are the perspectives of evaluation. We have not only an individual perspective on technology, but also an organizational perspective and a perspective from the point of view of society. Which means that, for example, those people who should use technology that is used at home for care, the patients on the one hand, the neighbors, the care provider, the caring people, and so on, have a certain perspective on this technology, which probably is different to the organizational perspective, for example, of the healthcare provider or other organizations, for example, healthcare insurance companies or so on. And the perspective of society might be different, because you can ask from this perspective whether it makes sense from an economic point of view to use technology in such situations, or whether it is too much expensive, for example. Okay. Since I think since I do not have so much time to present the whole idea here, I would like to focus on the dimension of evaluation, safety and security. If you take a look on safety and security, then the idea is that such technology should provide for the prevention of accidents at home, for example, or even on the road. In one of the projects, a car was developed which is able to drive to the sidewalk when the driver loses his consciousness, for example. Then this technology should help to prevent healthcare problems by monitoring the health status of a person and by using telemedicine technologies. And furthermore, the technology shall help in cases of emergencies, maybe after an accident, in case of healthcare problems like in heart attack and so on. That's the idea of safety and security with regard to this technology. But when you take a look on safety and security and try to evaluate in which way it might interfere with other dimensions, then you see that safety and security can interfere with privacy, which is very important in Germany at least. Because to provide for safety and security, it's mandatory to collect, store and process massive amounts of sensitive personal data about health status of a person. And even if all data protection regulations are implemented, we have a huge debate about that in Germany, there are far-reaching interference with privacy could occur, because you can imagine. Maybe I can provide an example. Well, imagine you sit in your bed. You watch on TV. You watch on TV a football match. Your favorite team loses, and you're quite you're getting out of control somehow. You're nuts like me, and it's quite probable that your health status in this situation would be out of the parameters would be out would be too high or too low. For example, your blood pressure or your pulse would show numbers which are not normal. And if they are monitored, those health parameters, it's quite probable, or that this is the scenario, that then in this case, suddenly your telephone will ring and somebody would call you and would ask you, is everything okay with you? No, but it's not an accident or no emergency. And probably you would think, well, is it a good idea that in this case everybody can see that what my health status is? It would infringe, it would interfere with your private sphere when this is done. So it's quite probable that you would change your habits because you would try to prevent such situations. And maybe it would change your self-conception in the sense that you think, well, maybe I should adopt to the expectations that are brought to me. Maybe you change, or as I already said, your habits. You do not watch anymore the football matches of your favorite team. So you would change your whole life potentially. If you take a look on safety and security in relation to autonomy, you have you have some other effects which can compare with those I already presented to you. Those systems shall protect persons against accidents and increase their safety. That's their purpose. But again, the prevention of accidents can interfere with personal autonomy and can narrow the possibility to act as one wishes, because if, for example, if you would like to do something which might be dangerous, you are prevented to do that. And you can ask, well, why am I not allowed to do that? Is it okay that technology prevent me from doing things that I usually did in the past, and now when I'm a little bit when I'm old, I'm prevented from doing the things I'm used to do. So again, there are possible conflicts. If, for example, you have to consent to this to the application of that technology, but you can ask whether persons who are mentally handicapped can really consent to the usage of that technology. You can ask how far-reaching the interference of the technology in your daily life should be, and you can ask in which way questions like questions of responsibility and accountability in case of system breakdown should be handled. And the last interference is the interference between safety and security and care, in the sense of taking care of somebody. The idea of this technology is to enable the elderly to stay safe and secure in their own homes, because they get help from ambient assisted technology. In this case, those systems shall complement care provided by persons or even shall substitute this kind of care. And again, you can ask what are the conflicts or the outcomes of the usage of such technology. And in this case, you can say that, for example, those people can be isolated from other persons, because often it is the case that the caregiving person is the only social contact during the day. So if you substitute this kind of personal care by technology, you have people who are completely isolated from social contacts. Okay, I will skip that. So again, we can take a look on this quotation. It's argued that information systems are intentionally or unintentionally informed by moral values of their makers. Our tool to evaluate such ethical questions should be used in this way. The idea is that designers of computer systems, in this case ambient assisted technology and ambient assisted living systems, when they develop concepts of technology, when they develop prototypes, when they develop pre-production models and production models, the moral and social norms and values of those designers and engineers are put in those systems. That's the idea. And our tool should be used to evaluate whether those moral norms and values of the designers of this technology fit together with the moral values of the stakeholders, for example, those persons who shall use this technology. The idea is that we use focus groups, we bring together stakeholders, and we try to let them talk about the technology. We try to we show them the technology either in as an example, so they can take it into their hands, so they can experience the technology, or we create a scenario in which we explain how the technology should work in the future. And then we hope, and we already did this, it really works, we hope that we can evaluate the moral values of those stakeholders, and we can compare those moral values with the moral values of designers and engineers. And if those do not fit together, then we have to go back to the design table, and we have to try to change the technology so that the new version would fit would fit the expectations of the stakeholders who should use the technology in the future. In extreme cases, it can happen that the whole development should be aborted, because there are some rare cases in which it might be possible that the technology cannot be changed, that it can meet the expectations of the stakeholders. That's the whole idea. Of course, we can add some other considerations, for example, economic interests and considerations, and it would be possible to add considerations, but for example about sustainability or something like that. And when you look into such focus group interviews, when you look in the transcripts of the discussions of the stakeholders, you see that the perspectives are quite different. And when you take a look on this slide, you see that the individual perspective is quite different from the organizational perspective and from the perspective from the point of view of society. When you ask individuals, particularly when you ask the prospective patients, their idea, for example, of care is that care is a kind of social interaction, and that includes a moral value. On the other side, you have, for example, healthcare providers, or you have the designers and engineers who create this technology, who argue that care is to guarantee a certain health status, which is quite a different thing, I guess. And you can see that all other dimensions, the understanding of all other dimensions is quite different. For example, I can live my life independently is the idea of autonomy from the individual perspective. On the organizational and social, I can't express that. On the third perspective, personal assistance may be reduced or replaced by technology, so you are not dependent from a person who takes care of you, which is a quite different understanding of autonomy. Or, for example, privacy, no surveillance in my private sphere. The prospective patients expect that the technology there is no surveillance by technology. There shall be no interference with the private sphere, and on the other side, you have the idea that privacy means that all legal and technical measurements will be used to provide for data protection, which again is a quite different understanding of privacy. And if you take a look on self-conception, the idea what is a human being, how should a human being live, then you see that the respondents in our interviews argue that they do not want to be a part of a machinery, they do not want to be something like a small part in a huge machinery which interfere with their life. On the other side, you have actually no idea about how a human life should be lived or how people should see themselves. So there's simply an empty space. And maybe we can take a look on participation. Most of our respondents argue that they really want to have a real social interaction in the process of care. They would like to have a person at home, they would like to speak to somebody, they would like to touch somebody. On the other hand, you have the idea that mediated communication with Skype or something like that is totally sufficient to participate in social life. Again, it's quite different view. And you have even the idea that participation means that the elderly can be made productive, for example, that they can provide for care for small children, for example, with the help of technology. Again, a quite different idea. So one more benefit of the application of an evaluation tool is that it is possible to uncover that different stakeholders have quite different notions about the meaning of technical definitions, about social and moral values, and much more. And this process I showed to you might help to find common ground about such definitions and about the meaning of social and moral values. So the general idea of value-sensitive design is that you might design products, services that are more acceptable for potential users because the technology better meets their needs of all stakeholders, and the stakeholders have the feeling, the impression that they are heard, that they have a voice in the development of technology. In order to provide for individual well-being, in this case the elderly people, as well as public welfare, because if it is possible to reduce costs of care provision, it would reduce the costs, and it would help to stabilize the healthcare system not only in Germany but in other countries. For example, Poland has the same problems as I already mentioned. So that's the idea of our model of evaluation, ethical evaluation of ambient assisted technology. And if you would like to call it best practice, I would agree to that term. Actually, it is used, currently it is used in Germany to evaluate almost every research program or every product or every technology which their development is funded by the Ministry of Education and Research, and which is related to any kind of healthcare provision, either in hospitals, either at home or at other places. There's one important caveat. Often we were asked, can we say something about technology in general, in the sense of this technology is ethically acceptable or that technology is not ethically acceptable. From our point of view, our tool to evaluate the technology, it is not designed to provide for statements or moral evaluations with regard to technology in general. We only can evaluate technology in a specific context of application. And it's particularly designed for the evaluation of ambient assisted living systems. There are some attempts to try to adapt this evaluation tool for other technology, but I'm not sure whether this will be successful, because you have to think, you have to change, for example, the evaluation dimensions so that they fit to the technology that you would like to evaluate. So I'm finished. Thank you for your patience and your attention, and I would appreciate all of your comments, critique, and of course questions. Thank you very much.